Good evening. Welcome to Androscoggin Historical Sighting, 2011, March 22nd. And tonight we have an interesting program. Annette Dory will introduce the speaker, and I'll just give her time to come up here, and we will hope you'll enjoy the program.
This is a far Welcome, everybody. How many people were here for part one of Mark Lee's presentation? That's what I've been curious. Look at all your returning.
Good. Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I figured we'd have a lot of repeats. So you already know that Mark Lee is an architectural designer with Harriman and Associates, and he did a wonderful job with part one of the historic buildings. Also, you're on the Historic Preservation Board.
Correct, of Lewiston, yeah.
Right, and passionate about our history, so we're excited to have you back. Before I turn it over to you, if anybody needs a program about the other programs that are coming up as a reminder, besides what I tell you, if you want to take one of these home, I'll put them on the refreshments table for later, okay? You may take one. So I want to remind you about the other two programs we have coming up next month on April 26th, which is also a Tuesday evening. We have a panel of genealogists that will help people either get started or get unstuck with their genealogy efforts. Or if you want to just come because you share the passion, that's good too. And then May 24th is our annual meeting, and for that we have a speaker, Patricia Hughes, who has studied the waterfalls of Maine and who will be talking about the waterfall and benefits to the local industries right here in Androscoggin County. So you're certainly welcome to attend that, and you'll want to sign up for the annual meeting. I'm going to pass around the famous yellow pad and the green pen so that you can sign up if you'd like to be on the mailing list or the emailing list, whichever you'd like. And I'll start with Betty right there. So keep that going if you want to sign before. I'll put these on the refreshment table. Thank you all for coming. Mark, thank you for coming back. We're looking forward to the rest of your story.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Mark Lee. For those who weren't here for part one, I'm an associate at the firm of Harriman. We no longer use the associates or Alonzo or any of that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the firm is 140 years old. It's located, headquartered in Auburn, Maine right now. It has offices in Manchester, New Hampshire, and in Portland, Maine as well. I'm an Auburn resident, or currently a Lewiston resident, was an Auburn resident growing up for 20 plus years. So I have sort of a familiarity with a lot of the buildings in the community from my days of sort of walking around, whether it was as a newspaper carrier in the Lake Street School area, or as a student at the local schools, or at St. Dom's when it was over in Lewiston. Tonight, I'm not an architectural historian, and I'm not an expert on a lot of the subject matter here. What I do is probably share along with you a passion for history, and it helps me understand my place in the world and my little corner of the world. Having born in 1970, there's a lot of you here are probably more familiar with the subject matter than I am. And the last time we were doing the first 70 years of the firm, and so that brought us from 1870 up to just around 1940, if my math is right. From 1940 to 2010 would be the next 70 years. There are a few folks with us tonight that actually have a much better sort of reach on that portion of the history. Bob Thorpe was, Bob, everyone know Bob here? Bob was president of Harriman for a number of years, and so Bob knows a lot more about the material than I do, and hopefully that'll spark some conversation. So if we think of this less as a lecture and more like Friday night with the slideshow, the slide projector, sans the popcorn, I think we'll be doing all right here. And so if at any time during the presentation you have a question, please stop, ask. If I can answer it, Bob probably can. So like I said, the last time we talked about the origin of the firm, the founder was George Millard Coombs, a son of a shipwright, who came in search of work in Lewiston during the Industrial Revolution and the growth of Lewiston. He apprenticed as a carpenter, draftsman, and eventually earned the designation of architect. So again, the
Mark,
first...
If
Yeah,
we have somebody
Bill.
turn out the lights along the
Sure.
back there, that would help.
Excellent, yeah. I think we're getting those now.
That's good.
How's that?
Thank
Better?
you.
So there's sort of the first half, 1928, kind of a year that demarks the second half. And again, there were a lot of name changes through the year, starting with George Coombs, and then he goes to work for Charles Douglas, and then goes to work with Kimball and Coombs. There's an association with Francis Fassett and Stevens at that time. Then Stevens and Coombs, and finally just George Millard Coombs in 1880. Coombs, Gibbs, Wilkinson, Coombs and Gibbs, Coombs brothers, Harry, and finally Harry S. Coombs, which is one of the Coombs brothers, uncle to Alonzo J. Harriman. The last time we also looked, there's the crowd right there on their Lisbon Street office. And last time we looked a little bit of the architectural lineage of the time and the journey through the various Victorian styles, among them the French Baroque, the Second Empire style of the William Fry House on Main Street in Lewiston. That is in the upper left-hand corner, and as well as several of the other. There's the Romanesque antecedent in the Dingley building down on the lower left. We have the Italian Renaissance Baroque style in the block to the upper right, and then finally you see the neoclassical splendor of the Lewiston Public Library. All those were done with Coombs as the primary designer. George Coombs dies suddenly in 1909 of pneumonia, and then the firm continues for a short period of time under the direction of his two sons, Harry and Fred, as Coombs brothers. This lasted until 1913, when Fred departed ways with his brother, eventually moving his practice to Concord, New Hampshire. The resulting firm, Harry Coombs, continued the success achieved by his father. Under his ownership, the firm won several substantial commissions, including the Webster Grammar School here in Auburn. And then part two, and that begins really in 1898. Alonzo Jesse Harriman was born in Bath, like his great uncle George Coombs, and he was also influenced by the shipbuilding trade. From an early age, he desired to learn to design ships, and so in 1916 he enrolled in the mechanical engineering course at the University of Maine. During his years in college, he would return each summer to Bath and work at VIW in various departments. Upon graduation, he would actually go to work at VIW. But the shipbuilding industry at that time, and this is again in 1921, 22, the shipbuilding industry wasn't doing so well, and not much of the economy was. So he went to work for his uncle Harry in the architectural firm as a draftsman. Something about the profession of architecture appealed to him, and in 1923 he decided to pursue further his studies at Harvard, where he got his Master of Arts in 1928. At this time, the world of architecture was, in architectural education, was experiencing profound change. With the founding of the Bauhaus, which was a design school in Germany by Walter Gropius, design education espoused modernism and the concepts of form and function, and that industrialization and mass production could bring appropriate and meaningful design to the masses. Up to the 20th century, Western art was seen as sort of a continuum of design tracing back to Greco-Roman classicism. Modernism, it was debated, was a discontinuation of this tradition and an emergence of a new understanding of modern circumstances in all aspects of culture. The arts, including architecture, were manifestations of this new reality. Emblematic of the modern expression in architecture can be seen in this photo here. It's the Fages shoe factory. It actually made shoe lasts. Interesting to think about Germany building shoe lasts and factories over here in Auburn and Lewiston in the shoe industry. But this was in 1911. And then further in the school itself, the Bauhaus School in Dessau, Germany, in 1926, both designed by Walter Gropius. Gropius would flee Germany as the rise of Nazism and nationalism were at odds with his teaching, and he would eventually go on to teach at Harvard and establish a practice in Cambridge known as the Architects Collaborative, and they have a play or a role in the history of this area as well. During his time at Harvard, Alonzo also worked part-time as a structural engineer at the Boston firm of Cram and Ferguson from 1925 to 1928. And then upon graduation, he returned to Maine and continued to work for his uncle. In 1928, Alonzo was made a partner of the firm, and his name was changed to Coombs and Harriman. The Great Depression had a severe impact on the construction industry in Maine, as it did everywhere. Harry Coombs died in 1938, that's 10 years after they joined forces, and leaving Alonzo Harriman as a sole practitioner. And at this time, this is 1938, and the firm is down to 3 people: Alonzo, his wife Pearl, and as I understand it, Eddie Doucette as well. They were subletting space at their office in the Cora Temple building on the corner of Sabattis and Main Streets. The following projects shown here are not located in Androscoggin County, but without them, there might not be a Harriman firm, and I wouldn't be in front of you. So the one in front of you is the shipbuilding facilities in the shipyard in South Portland. The Maritime Commission instructed the South Portland Shipbuilding Corporation to build a shipyard in support of a expanding naval fleet now engaged in war. It was due in part to Alonzo's familiarity with the shipbuilding industry and work at VIW that his firm was selected for the commission. One source cited the project's cost at nearly $11 million. I don't know that all of it went to Harriman, but at that time, that is substantial. The scale of the work prompted Harriman to open an office in South Portland, and by 1942, the firm's employment of architects and engineers had grown to nearly 100. So this is the first time we also have sort of a distinction in trades with architects and engineers. And in a period of 4 years, we've gone from 3 people to 100. The building, what we're going to be looking at is building that's labeled DE. And 14, you can see the berth where the ships are actually being constructed. To give you some sense of where this is, there are a bunch of oil tanks currently in South Portland on this property today. Fort Preble, or SMCC, is to your right. This is Cushing Point. There we go. Now you can see the long direction here shows the length of the building, and you can actually see the shape of the hulls on the top of the screen being constructed, and then you can see the hangers of all the different steel. They would come in on rail parts of the steel, and then they would be processed through the building and then they would go out and actually be built in the docks. There we go. That's a close-up of, again, that yard. You can see the ship hull on the right-hand side of the page, and then the doors where the manufactured parts would come out of the shed. And then inside of the shed right there, looking at some of the steel being fabricated and on some of the gantry cranes and being moved. There are several notable points to realize in this project, themes that would emerge in Harriman's work. Observe here that the structure is comprised of wood, and so these bow trusses that we see at the top, and all the little gusset joints and plates are wood, chosen for its availability, cost, and efficiency. Secondly, the structure is composed of standardized trusses and bays with the whole assembly a kit of parts. Third, and most important, was the use of natural light, the sort of diffused natural light pouring in. Electrical light was in operation at the time, as these yards had to run around the clock, but during the day, the skylights at the top would let in diffuse natural light